Yes, I'm delighted to be here. I've flown all the way from Australia to be here, and the reason why I couldn't get to Radio Days Europe was because there was a tropical cyclone, and we lost power, and the airport was closed, and all of that, and that was all fun. But I'm here now, which is brilliant. Radio futurologist obviously means man who can print his own business cards. There it is. I've worked in radio now for 35 years or so. This was me at a radio station so good, Bauer have closed it down. And there I am in the early 1990s. Also on this photograph is Chris Moyles, as chunky young Chris Moyles, up at the top left here, but he went on to, of course, be on Radio 1's Breakfast Show for a long time in the UK and is now on Radio X in the UK. Also on here is a man who is in prison for killing somebody. Shall we play a game of Guess the Murderer? No, let's not. Let's move on. I also worked for the original Virgin Radio out of the UK, where I was looking after what we did in terms of the website and new platforms. And while I was there, launched the first daily podcast from a radio station in the UK, and also launched the first mobile phone app in the world, which was really good. You could get it on 5 different Symbian phones. It was a winner, and almost had 5 users, which was an excellent thing. Now, I'm a radio futurologist, as you've heard, working for all kinds of people across the world, and I also write the PodNews newsletter, which you should all get. It's very good. It comes out every single day, all about the future of podcasting and all about the current stuff going on in that area as well. And in fact, only today, Spotify has just rolled out their Spotify partner platform to earn money from uploading video onto Spotify in this country. So that's going to be interesting seeing how that works. So I'm going to show you this photograph. It's from 1922. And it's from a man called Hugo Gernsback. Now, you may not have heard of Hugo Gernsback, but he used to be a very well-known science fiction writer. And actually, the Hugos in the US, the awards for science fiction, are called after Hugo Gernsback. And he wrote this book in 1922, The Radio of the Future. And I thought it's interesting seeing how much has actually come true. Today, you see at the top radio-controlled aeroplanes. Well, all of the aeroplanes that we have are controlled by radio, telling them where to go and telling them where they are in the sky. There's a radio power thing over there, which of course we use on our mobile phones as wireless charging. There's a radio clock, which I'm sure that many of us have in our radio studios. Fun fact, radio clocks don't work in Australia because we don't have any radio transmitters broadcasting the radio time, which is interesting. Just underneath that, correspondence by radio, we would call that email. And Hugo Gernsback has exactly the right idea here because it's email that's getting printed out and put straight in the bin. So that's absolutely excellent. On his desk, you can see he's doing a little bit of home banking on one side. On the other side, he's having a Microsoft Teams meeting. And on the far left-hand side, the radio heater, or as we know it today, the microwave oven. I think Hugo Gernsback got a lot of things right here, but I think he's also fallen into a trap. And it's the same trap that we quite often fall into when we're talking about the future of radio. We've thought of radio as a technology, and it isn't necessarily a technology. It's a thing that we all consume. It's a thing that people understand. And we should probably take it away from the technology and focus a bit more on what you actually hear. And it's a good job if we do that, because we can see that radio is still massive, absolutely massive. 9 out of 10 people listen to the radio every single week. Whether that's in Brisbane, where I live, here in Ireland, celebrating your highest ever figures for radio listening, which is fantastic. The UK, the US, Norway, Malaysia, and so on it goes. Radio is doing fantastically well, but the radio of the future isn't necessarily the radio of the past. And the way that we are consuming radio is most certainly changing. This is data from the UK, and it shows how much audio we all listen to in the UK. Of all of the audio that they listen to in the UK, I haven't lived there for 9 years, all of the audio that they listen to in the UK, 67% of that audio, of the stuff that they put in their ears, is to live radio, AM, FM, DAB, and IP. Only 9% to podcasts, yet all of the talk about podcasts, you'd have thought that it was much higher, but it really isn't. 18% to Spotify and so on, and so forth. If you look in the US, what the US do is very interesting. They look at ad-supported audio. So they ignore the stuff that doesn't have ads on it, because why would the advertisers be interested in that? And they can see there 70% of all of the ad-supported audio that Americans listen to is to the radio. Podcasts at 18% in the US, streaming audio at just 12%. This is where I live in Australia. I don't want to show off or anything, but it's quite nice, isn't it? This is Tangalooma Island. The Australian government did some work recently looking at what we listen to in terms of audio content, and you can see that there's an awful lot of audio which is listened to, but an awful lot of that is AM radio, FM radio, DAB plus in Australia. There's a bit of podcasts, there's a bit of radio via the internet, and online streaming services. Yes, they're there, but it's only one part of the audio that we listen to. But it's interesting how radio works and how audio works. This is more data from the UK, and it's brand new data. It's data that only came out very recently in the UK. But it shows the device that we use to listen to audio. And the device that people are using in the UK to listen to audio, primarily for 55 pluses, is the radio. Whether it's AM, FM, or DAB there. Yes, there are other ways of listening to audio, but radio is the real winner in the UK for 55 pluses. But when you look at younger audiences, it's a very different thing. The smartphone is the device that people use to listen to audio the most. Radio is still there. Radio is still doing a fantastic job. AM, FM, DAB, but you can also see other platforms there. But it's the smartphone which is the important thing for younger audiences, 15 to 24s. And that means that the type of audio that they are listening to is a bit different, because the type of audio that people listen to on a smartphone is not the same type of audio that people listen to on some of these other devices. So it won't come as a surprise, hopefully, that 100% of the audio coming out of a radio is the radio. Good, excellent. But smart speakers are really good radios. 70% of the audio that we listen to on a smart speaker is live radio, with Spotify and Apple Music doing, being a very far away second. If you look at laptops and things, and actually, again, live radio does really well. 37% of all of the audio that we listen to on laptops and things is to live radio. But when you look at the number one device that young people are using, it's a very different look here, with Spotify, Apple Music, and podcasts being the top two things here. And of course, it's going to be the case, because it's an interactive device that you have in your pocket, that you have control over, and so therefore you can control what it is that you're having a listen to. And radio isn't really built for that. So things are different when you look at different devices in terms of the future. And if you came here on the tram today, you would have seen lots of people with headphones in. I'm terribly sorry, but they weren't listening to the radio. They were listening to lots of other things, but they weren't listening to live radio. So let me show you one more thing. This is Norway. Norway Airport, a place where I would recommend, but not to be stuck there for 9 hours. Because unsurprisingly it snowed in Norway, and they clearly don't understand how to deal with it. So there we are. But anyway, it was nice. I was there for a Norwegian radio conference, and they were showing how people listen to audio there as well. And I thought that this was interesting. This is how Norwegians listen to audio. A lot of on-demand music, as you can see, but an awful lot of radio. Radio very clearly number one in this, with podcasts as well. You can see the peaks at breakfast. You can see a peak in the afternoon for afternoon drive. Picking up the kids from school is normally a good peak in most markets. So I thought that was interesting. And then they showed me how young people are listening to audio, and it's different, and it's very different. Radio is still there. Absolutely, it's still there. But on-demand music and podcasts are significantly larger in terms of audio consumption in Norway. So, what's the future of radio? Well, I think one way to look at what the future of radio is to look at what the data is telling us. I went to have a look at a big transmitter in LA. Somebody's ruined it by putting some letters in front of it, but still there we are. And some of the data coming out of the US is fascinating. Spoken words share of audio is really increasing. It's gone up, as you can see, by 55% over the last 9 years. Spoken word is particularly important in terms of mobile phone use, where you can see a significant increase, more than double, in terms of consumption. So spoken word is a really important thing. Spoken word is also really important when we go through things like the pandemic, where you suddenly see people shifting from, in blue, the stuff that they normally listen to in green when the pandemic was on and they were in lockdown. You can see some real movement away from the music radio stations and to the radio stations with the people on. Radio Melbourne and 3AW and News Radio. If you are ever in Las Vegas, I would recommend this. This is the Neon Museum. It's got lots of beautiful old bits of neon. But some of the data being shared at the NAB show next week will include this. This is data from Jacobs Media, and it shows why people listen to the radio. The main reason why people listen to the radio has changed away from music, which it used to be before 2019, to people. I like particular DJs, shows, and hosts. And what happened at the end of the last decade was the rise of YouTube Music, Spotify, and Pandora, and so on and so forth in that particular market. So people now want to hear people on the radio. Here's another bit from that data. The reason why people listen to the radio less is that they're missing the people on the radio. The personality or show I enjoyed listening to is no longer on local radio. And I think that that's probably a good point just to remember what the future of radio is. So very quickly, let me show you what I think the future of radio is going. This is a book by Eric Newsom, who used to work for NPR. He says that we should stop thinking of our product as a technology, like Hugo Gernsback was, and see it as an experience. Stop thinking of yourself as a terrestrial FM broadcaster and start thinking of yourself as someone who creates audio experiences that accompany listeners throughout their life. I think that's a good thing, but I think it's easier just to focus on this, that radio is a human connection and a shared experience. And let me show you 3 very quick examples of what I mean by that. Firstly, we need to consider the reason why people tune in to the radio. And that reason has changed since the 1990s when I was on the air with Chris Moyles and with The Murderer. It's changed. They are different people, by the way, just for clarity. It's changed. We are no longer the place where people just go because we've got a good mix of music. We are no longer the place where people go because we are Cork's #1 hit music station. We are no longer the place where people go to find new music first. That's what TikTok is there for. We're not the place anymore where people go to connect us to the stars. That's not what radio is there for anymore. That's what things like Instagram are there for. We don't do travel news either, really. Yes, of course, we broadcast travel news, but more and more people these days have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto and stuff, and that is telling them actual real-time travel on the roads that they are actually driving on. Is the future live and local? Well, the future is partially local and partially live. I think maybe real and relevant is closer, or maybe we just focus, of course, on a human connection and a shared experience. The second thing is making great content on your radio station for the way that your audio consumes it. And I'm not talking about spending more money here. I'm talking about understanding the content that we have and getting more from that content. This is a patent. It's not very exciting, but this bit in the middle of the patent it says traditional broadcast radio spends billions of dollars creating millions of hours of creative audio content that is only used once. And all of our radio stations, we have this kind of religious belief that we are only supposed to broadcast something once and we can't repeat it. And I think that that's a bit crazy. And maybe we should be a bit cleverer. Biggest radio station in Europe, Radio 2. People listen for 10.8 hours a week to that radio station. Or, to put it a different way, people do not listen for 22.5 hours a day. Yet, that radio station broadcasts lots of stuff once and never reruns it. Why not take an amazing interview that you had on your breakfast show, on your mid-morning show, and rebroadcast that at other times of the day when people would not have heard it, and make the most out of the content that you've spent great money producing. That's a really good movement. And this is an example in Australia of that actually happening. And thirdly, we do need help from others. If I was still warming up for the Taoiseach, this is the slide that I hope that he would see, because this is the important part. Radio does need to be able to be flexible and does need to be able to change within our fast-moving media environment. And that means that the regulation that radio has must be the regulation for 2025 and not the regulation for 1985. That's an important part. But secondly, the quid pro quo with that is that radio should be given protections as well to help ensure its place in society. We heard from the minister how important radio was for him. It's really important that radio gets protections on things like smart speakers to make sure that we are absolutely going to be there and guaranteed to be there. That radio is given work in terms of advertising to avoid all of that small print in the ads that we know turns people off. All of that stuff is really important for radio's future as well. So radio is a human connection and a shared experience. I've talked about 9 out of 10 people tuning in. Listeners are tuning into the people, most of all. We need to remember that competitive advantage that today is very different to the competitive advantage that we had in the 1980s and 90s. Getting the most out of our content is a really important thing. And finally, let's not forget the benefit of radio, which is that human connection and shared experience. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great conference and keep listening. Thank you.